I drove my ex-wife's mother home that night when her transmission finally gave out, and I told myself it didn't matter. She was just Nell, the woman who used to be my mother-in-law, the woman I'd stopped having any obligation to protect the day her daughter signed the divorce decree and relocated 3 states away. But when I arrived at her dark, silent house, she didn't reach for the door handle. She just sat there staring at the porch light she'd switched on for no one, and then this woman, age 53, widowed, gently forsaken by her only remaining child, uttered something so faint I nearly missed it. "Let's take one more lap, please." I didn't question what she meant. I didn't remind her how late it was. I simply drove because I'd known Nell for 12 years, stood beside her at her husband's burial, repaired her sink and cut her grass long after I'd stopped being part of the family. And in that entire span, I had never once heard her speak like that. Like someone who'd been keeping her breath trapped for 3 years and finally discovered a safe place to release it. Here's what I didn't grasp yet, sitting behind that wheel at midnight. Why was I, the man her daughter divorced, the only person left who'd notice if she never arrived home? What had that physician told her that afternoon that she couldn't voice until the homes turned into empty road and the sole light was my dashboard? And why did one quiet lap around her vacant neighborhood become the thing that would shatter everything I thought I'd already forfeited? The message had arrived at 6:40 that evening while I was still on a job site with dust in my hair and a nail gun in my hand. "Ryan, honey, the transmission finally surrendered. Any chance you're free after your shift?" That was Nell. Always honey, always apologizing before she even requested anything. Always acting like needing assistance was something she had to merit. I stared at the phone longer than I should have. 2 years divorced. Chelsea living in Denver now, calling her mother maybe twice a month, treating this entire town, including the woman who raised her, like an old coat she'd outgrown. By every rule that made sense, Nell wasn't mine to concern myself with anymore. When a marriage ends, the family ends alongside it. That's how it's meant to function. But I typed back on my way before I'd even completed the thought. Some habits don't read the divorce papers. I found her outside the medical complex on 4th Street. Not the repair shop, not the supermarket, the medical building. That was the first thing that caught in my chest. She stood beneath the awning with her handbag pressed against her stomach with both hands, the way you hold something when you're chilled, except it wasn't cold. The July air was dense and warm and smelled like fresh-cut grass and someone's barbecue grill down the street. She looked smaller than I recalled. When had that occurred? "There's my rescue," she said, climbing into my truck. And she smiled the way she always did, big enough to convince, but her eyes were performing something else entirely. Her eyes looked like they'd been somewhere difficult all day and hadn't fully returned. "Nell." I pulled into traffic. "The medical building?" "I thought the car broke down at home." "Oh, it did. I had a friend drop me here earlier." She waved a hand like she was swatting a fly. "Just a checkup. Dull grown-up matters. You don't want to hear about my blood pressure." "I fix broken things for a living," I said. "I enjoy boring." She laughed, and it was genuine for exactly 1 second before it collapsed back into that careful, practiced brightness. "How's the business? Chelsea mentioned you were expanding." She caught herself, said her daughter's name, and then winced at it like touching a stove she'd forgotten was hot. "Sorry. I don't know why it's fine." And it was, mostly. We'd taken on a second crew. Good problem to have. Your father would have been proud. Her husband, my father-in-law, Walt, had taught me half of what I understood about framing a house before the cancer took him 3 years back. I'd held Nell's hand at that funeral while Chelsea stood on the other side of the casket checking her phone. I never told anyone that part. Some things you just carry. We talked about minor things for a while. The price of lumber, the new traffic signal nobody requested, whether the diner on Route 9 had changed ownership. Easy talk, filler. But beneath it I kept noticing her gazing out the window at the passing houses like she was committing them to memory. And every time we hit a red light she'd grow very still and her hands would tighten on that purse. The drive to her place should have taken 12 minutes. I made it last 20, taking the longer route past the lake without really deciding to. She noticed. Of course she noticed. "This isn't the way home," she said softly. "Traffic on Elm." A lie. Elm was empty. She let me have it anyway. By the time I arrived at her house the sky had turned that deep bruised blue that comes right before full darkness. Her place sat at the end of the block, a small blue house with white trim that Walt had painted himself the summer before he fell ill. The windows were black. The only light was the porch bulb she'd left burning, casting a small yellow circle onto an empty welcome mat. I put the truck in park. Home safe. And she didn't move. She sat there with her seatbelt still fastened, staring at that little house like it was a hospital waiting room and not the place she'd lived for 30 years. The engine ticked. Somewhere a dog barked twice and gave up. I watched her throat move as she swallowed. Then, so softly I nearly missed it beneath the sound of the AC, "Let's take one more lap, please." I didn't ask why. I put the truck back in drive and pulled away from that dark house, and I swear I heard her exhale, this long trembling breath, like she'd been submerged and just now broke the surface. Her shoulders lowered from around her ears. In the glow of the dashboard, I could see her face relax, some invisible burden slipping off it inch by inch. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet," I said. "My laps are famous for poor planning. We might end up in the next county." "That's all right." A small laugh, damp at the edges. "If we do, I'll blame you. I'll allow it." We drove, no destination, past the shuttered hardware store, past the elementary school where the swings hung motionless in the dark, past the church with its sign that still read, "Merry Christmas" in July, because no one could be bothered to update it. The town rolled by in soft smears of light, and for a long while neither of us spoke, and it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the opposite. It felt like the silence had been waiting for us. Then she said, to the window, not to me, "The doctor found something." My hands tightened on the wheel. I kept my voice steady. "Okay. They think it's manageable." That's the word they keep using, manageable. She said it like it tasted strange, a heart issue. "My valve isn't closing the way it should. They want to perform a procedure. Not open heart, they said, the minor kind, through your leg somehow. I don't fully understand it, but there are risks. There are always risks at my age," they said, like my age is something I did wrong. Nell. I didn't know what to say, so I spoke the honest thing. "I'm sorry. That's frightening." "It is." Her voice cracked right down the middle. "It really is." And then she said the thing that broke something open in my chest, the thing I've never been able to unhear. "I sat in that room by myself today, Ryan. They gave me a folder and a date for the surgery and a pamphlet about what to do if I feel dizzy. And there was a chair next to me the whole time, an empty chair." She pressed her lips together hard and I kept thinking, who do I call? Who's the person you call when the doctor says the word surgery? And I went down my whole list in my head, and do you know who I landed on? I already knew. God help me. I already knew. "I landed on you," she said, "the man my daughter divorced. That's who was left. That's my whole list now, you." She laughed, but it was the saddest sound I'd ever heard come out of a person. "Isn't that something? I raised a child. I gave that girl everything, and when I got scared today, the only name I could think to call was the boy she threw away." The phrase, "threw away," sat in the truck like a stone. I wanted to tell her she was mistaken. I wanted to tell her Chelsea would come, that all she had to do was pick up the phone and her daughter would be on the next plane, but we both knew that wasn't true, and Nell had spent 3 years lying to herself about it, and I wasn't going to offer her one more lie tonight. "Have you told her?" I asked. "About the surgery?" Nell looked at her hands. "I called this afternoon. It went to voicemail." She texted back an hour later. She pulled out her phone, and in the blue light, I watched her thumb find the message, and she read it aloud in a flat little voice. "So sorry, Mom. Slammed at work this week. Keep me posted. Love you." She locked the phone. 2 exclamation points for her mother's heart surgery. 2 exclamation points and a keep me posted. I didn't say anything. There wasn't anything to say that wouldn't diminish it. "I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me," she said quickly, straightening up, composing herself the way she always did. "I don't want that. I've had enough people feel sorry for me to last 3 lifetimes. I haven't said it out loud yet to anyone, and I couldn't walk into that dark house and say it out loud to nobody. I couldn't. So, I asked for one more lap." She turned and looked at me, and her eyes were shining. "You're the only person who lets me be scared without trying to fix it in 30 seconds. I'm a contractor," I said. "I know the difference between a thing you fix and a thing you just hold steady while it trembles." That got her. She laughed, really laughed, and wiped her face with the back of her hand. And for a second, the woman I'd known for 12 years came all the way back into her eyes. "Walt would have liked hearing you say that," she said. "Walt taught me to say it." We drove for another hour, maybe more. I lost track. We stopped at the 24-hour gas station, and I bought 2 coffees that tasted like burnt pennies, and she told me things I'd never known. That she'd wanted to be a nurse before she got married. That she still had her acceptance letter to the nursing program in a shoebox in the closet. That she'd given it up because Walt got the plant job, and someone had to be home. She didn't say it bitterly. She said it like a woman reading a map of roads she never traveled. "Do you regret it?" I asked. "No," she said, then quieter, "Yes, both. You get old enough, you can hold 2 answers at once." By the time I finally brought her home for real, it was past midnight, and the whole town was asleep. I walked her to the door because Walt would have reached through the grave and struck me if I hadn't. She unlocked it, then stood there on the threshold with the porch light making a halo of her gray hair. "Ryan," she didn't turn around. "You have your own life. You have a business, and you're young, and someday you'll meet someone and none of this will be your job anymore. I know that. So I'm only going to ask you this once." Now she turned. "Will you come with me to the surgery? So there isn't an empty chair." I thought about all the reasons to say no. She wasn't my family. Her daughter would hate it. The whole town would talk. I opened my mouth to say something careful, something safe, something that left me an exit. "What time?" is what came out instead. The relief that crossed her face was so total, so unguarded that I had to look away. She reached out and squeezed my arm. Just once, just for a second, and said goodnight and went inside. I watched the porch light click off. I watched a lamp come on in the front room and then, a few minutes later, go dark. I sat in my truck outside my ex-wife's mother's house at midnight and I did not want to leave. That should have scared me more than it did. Because here's what I understood, driving home on empty roads with 2 cold coffees rattling in the cup holder, something had shifted tonight that couldn't shift back. For 2 years I'd told myself I checked on Nell out of loyalty to a dead man and an old habit. But loyalty doesn't make your chest ache when a woman climbs the stairs to a dark house. Habit doesn't make you take the longer way past the lake so a drive lasts 20 minutes instead of 12. I didn't have a name for what it was yet. I wasn't ready to give it one. But 3 states away, my ex-wife had no idea that the mother she'd left behind had just found something that felt like home in the passenger seat of my truck. And when she found out, she was going to burn it all down. The surgery was on a Tuesday, 3 weeks later, and I was in that waiting room at 5:30 in the morning with 2 coffees and a paperback I never opened. Nell came out of the prep area in a hospital gown with those little blue socks they give you. And she looked so small and so brave that I had to swallow hard before I could talk. She'd done her hair. That's the thing that got me. A woman going in for heart surgery, and she'd curled her hair the night before so she wouldn't look sick in front of me. "You came," she said, like there'd been a real chance I wouldn't. I said I would. "People say a lot of things." "I'm not people," I said, and handed her a coffee she wasn't allowed to drink, and she laughed and held it anyway just to have something warm in her hands. They came for her too soon. A nurse with a kind face and a clipboard asking if there was family to sit with, and Nell opened her mouth to say no, and I said, "I'm here." The nurse looked at me, then at the space on the form where it asked for relationship, and I watched Nell's face while I figured out what to say. "Family," I said. "I'm family." Nobody argued. Nell squeezed my hand so hard it hurt, and then they wheeled her through the double doors, and I sat back down in that plastic chair and stared at the wall for 4 hours that felt like 40. I texted Chelsea at 7 a.m., "Your mom's in surgery right now. Heart valve. She's in good hands. Thought you'd want to know." I watched the little bubble. Nothing. At 9:15, when they finally came out to tell me it had gone well, that she was in recovery, that she was going to be okay, my phone was still silent. Chelsea called back at 4 o'clock that afternoon. By then it was over. By then I'd already been sitting beside Nell's bed for hours watching her sleep, memorizing the steady green line of her heartbeat on the monitor like it was the best song I'd ever heard. "How is she?" Chelsea asked, breathless like she'd run somewhere. "She's alive," I said. No thanks to the exclamation points. "That's not fair, Ryan. I have a life." "So does she," I said, and hung up and turned my phone face down and went back to watching Nell breathe. That's the day it stopped being a favor. I can point to it exactly. It wasn't the drives or the coffee or the longer way past the lake. It was the moment I wrote "family" on a hospital form and meant it more than I'd meant almost anything. She healed slowly. The doctor said 6 weeks, and she took every one of them, and I was there for most of it whether I planned to be or not. I brought groceries. I built a little railing beside her back steps because they told her not to strain. I sat at her kitchen table while she got her color back, and we fell into something so easy it frightened me. The drives came back around week 4 when she was strong enough to want out of the house. She'd call around 8, never text now, always call. I'd started to notice and say, "I've got cabin fever, Ryan. Save me." And I'd grab my keys before she finished the sentence. They became ours, those drives. That's the only way I know how to say it. Some nights we went to the lake and parked and watched other people's headlights come and go. Some nights we drove nowhere at all, just looped the sleeping town while she talked. She could be tender 1 minute and sharp as a tack the next. She'd reach over and change my radio station without asking and say, "This song is a crime." And I'd say, "You're a guest in this truck." And she'd say, "I'm the reason this truck has anywhere to be and win because she always won." "You do that thing," she said one night watching me take the ramp instead of the shortcut. "What thing?" "You always pick the road with more room even when it's slower." She tilted her head at me. "You drive like a man trying not to feel trapped. You make ordinary driving sound like a therapy session. Only when I'm paying attention." She looked back out the window, smiling. "I pay a lot of attention to you. Did you know that?" I didn't answer that. I couldn't, because the honest answer was yes, and I pay attention right back. And that was a door neither of us was ready to walk through with the lights on. But it was there. It had been there for weeks, growing quiet in the dark like something planted. Her hand brushing mine when I passed her a coffee, and neither of us pulling back as fast as we should. The way she'd stopped calling me honey like I was a boy and started saying my name plain, Ryan, soft and low when she was tired, like it meant something that I was the one there. The way I caught myself changing my shirt twice before a drive that was supposedly nothing. A man can deceive himself for a long time. I'm proof of that. I told myself I was being kind. Then I told myself I was lonely, too, which was true. Then I told myself nothing had happened, so nothing was wrong. You can stack up a whole wall of excuses and hide behind it right up until the night the wall comes down. For me, the wall came down over a porch light. It was a Thursday. I'd come by after work to drop off a part for her dishwasher, and her porch bulb had burned out, and the whole front step was dark. She came to the door with her phone in her hand and this look on her face like she'd been sitting alone with her thoughts too long. I was going to change that, she said, nodding at the dead light. I got the ladder halfway out and lost my nerve. The doctor said no ladders. Sit down, I said. I've got it. I changed the bulb in about 90 seconds, standing on her step in the dark while she held the flashlight from her phone. And when the light came on, it lit up her face all warm and golden, and she was looking at me in a way that made my throat go tight. You're always fixing my things, she said quietly. You always have, broken things. That's not why you come. It wasn't a question. I came down off the step. We were close now, closer than we usually let ourselves get in the light. I could smell her, some soft powdery thing, and underneath it coffee, and underneath that, just her. Her eyes moved over my face like she was reading something she already knew and was afraid to speak aloud. Nell. My voice came out rough. Don't, she whispered. If you say something kind right now, I'm going to fall apart, and I've spent 3 years not falling apart in front of anyone. Then fall apart, I said. I've got you. I told you. I'm the guy who holds the thing steady while it trembles. Her face crumpled and steadied all at once, and then she reached up, slowly, giving me every chance in the world to step back, and placed her hand flat against my chest, right over my heart, which was racing like a jackhammer, and she said, "This is the most foolish thing I've ever done." Probably, I said. You're supposed to argue. I'm trying honesty. It's ugly, but it's fast. She laughed, this broken little laugh, and then she pulled me down by the front of my shirt and kissed me. It wasn't fireworks. I want to be truthful about that, because the fireworks kind is easy, and this was better. It was quiet and slow and certain, like a decision more than a feeling, like two people who'd been driving toward this for weeks and had finally arrived. When we came apart, she kept her hand on my chest, and her eyes were wet, and she said, "I'm scared, Ryan." Me, too. You don't look it. I'm working very hard. She laughed again and pressed her forehead to my jaw, and for a long moment, we just stood there in the golden light I'd made, holding each other on the front step of the house her dead husband painted. Two people who had absolutely no business being this happy, and were anyway. After that, there was no more pretending it was friendship. But here's what I need you to understand because it matters. We were careful, not ashamed. There's a difference and we lived in that difference for weeks. We didn't rush a single thing. We had dinners at her kitchen table and long walks at the reservoir where nobody knew us and drives that ended with her hand in mine on the seat between us, warm, staying. We built something slow and real and quiet. Quiet. That was the word that started to eat at me. Because I still hadn't told anyone. And she still hadn't told the one person who mattered. We have to tell Chelsea, she said one night, parked outside her house, both of us watching the porch light I'd fixed. I know. Not yet though. She said it fast. Not yet. Nell. I turned to look at her. Can I be honest about something? Not yet has a way of turning into never if you feed it long enough. I did that once in my marriage. I hadn't planned to say it, but there it was. When Chelsea got the Denver offer, I didn't fight. I told myself I was being supportive, being the good guy, giving her space. But the truth is, I was scared. So I went quiet and I let quiet make the decision for me, and I lost everything I was trying to protect by protecting it too carefully. I looked at her. I'm not doing that again. Not with you. Being careful was good until it turned into hiding. And Nell, I think we're hiding. She was quiet for a long time. Her thumb moved over the back of my hand. You know what she'll say, Nell finally said. You were her husband. There's no version of this the world calls normal. My daughter's ex-husband. People will look at me like she stopped. Like I did something wrong. Like I took something. You didn't take anything. She left. She left you 3 years before she left me. I turned her hand over in mine. You're allowed to have a life in the space somebody walked out of. Try telling her that. I will, I said. If you want me to, I will. But it has to come from us, together. Before she hears it from somebody else and it turns into a thing we did to her instead of a thing we found for ourselves. I squeezed her hand. I don't want to be your secret and I don't want you to be mine. I've spent enough of my life being careful. I'd rather be brave and wrong than careful and alone. Nell looked at me for a long, long moment in the light of the porch her husband painted. The light I'd fixed with my own hands. And something in her face settled. Some old, frightened thing finally lying down. Okay, she whispered. We tell her together, on our terms. On our terms. But, Ryan, she held my eyes. If we do this, if we say it out loud and the world gets to have an opinion, I need to know you won't vanish the second it gets hard. Because I have been left before. By a husband to a grave and a daughter to a city. I can't be left a third time. I would not survive being left a third time. I took her face in both my hands. I'm not a tourist here, I said. I'm not passing through. Whatever this costs, I'm paying it. She believed me. I saw her decide to believe me, which is braver than believing without thinking. And she leaned across the seat and kissed me. And we made a plan to tell Chelsea that weekend. Calmly, together, in control of our own story. We didn't get the weekend because 2 days later at a Sunday cookout for Nell's cousin's birthday, the one family gathering she never missed, Nell's cousin Denise watched me carry Nell a plate and refill her lemonade and rest my hand on the small of her back without thinking. And Denise put it together in about 4 seconds, the way small-town cousins do. And Denise had Chelsea's number. And that night, 3 states away, my phone lit up in the dark with a name I hadn't seen on my screen in over a year, Chelsea. I stared at it ringing. I already knew. Somewhere in Denver, my ex-wife had just been handed the one piece of news that could set the whole sky on fire, and she hadn't heard it from us, on our terms, the way we'd promised each other. She'd heard it as gossip, as a thing we'd hidden. The phone kept ringing. Nell's face went white across the table. And I understood that everything we'd built in the quiet was about to be dragged out into the hardest light there is. I answered on the second ring because letting it go to voicemail felt like a coward's move, and I was done being a coward. Ryan. Chelsea's voice was ice over something molten. Denise just told me the most insane thing. Tell me it's not true. Tell me my cousin is drunk and making things up about my mother and my ex-husband. I looked across the table at Nell. Her hand was pressed to her mouth. I made a choice right there, not to lie, not even a little, not even to buy us time. It's true, I said. Your mom and I are together. I was going to tell you this weekend. We both were. You were supposed to hear it from us. The silence on the line was the loudest thing I've ever heard. Then it broke, and it broke ugly. Are you out of your mind? She wasn't crying. Chelsea never cried when she was angry. She got precise, surgical. Every word sharpened to a point. She's my mother. She held me when I was a baby, Ryan. She's 53 years old. What is this? Some kind of, did you plan this? Did you two just, God? How long have you been behind my back? Nothing was behind your back, I said. You weren't here. There was no back to go behind. You've been gone 3 years. Don't you dare make this about me. Her voice cracked, just once, and I heard the real thing underneath the anger for the first time. You couldn't find one single woman in this entire country who wasn't my mom? You had to, out of everyone, her. Chelsea. Put her on. I looked at Nell. She'd heard enough of it to know. She held out her hand for the phone, steady on the outside, but I could see it trembling. I gave it to her. I only heard her side. It was worse than hearing both. Hi, sweetheart. A pause. I know. I know how it sounds. A longer pause, and I watched Nell's face fold. That's not fair. That's, Chelsea, please. Let me, her eyes filled. Don't say that. Please don't say that to me. And then the words that told me exactly what was happening on the other end. The words that turned my stomach to stone. You don't mean that. You wouldn't. You're my daughter. Then Nell went very quiet and just listened, and her whole body seemed to shrink into the chair. And when she finally spoke again, her voice was small and flat and defeated in a way I'd never heard from her. Okay, she whispered. Okay. I understand. She hung up. She set the phone down on the table very gently, like it might break, and she looked at me with a face I didn't recognize. She gave me a choice, Nell said. Him or me, she said. If I keep seeing you, she said, that's it. She's done. No calls. No visits. She said she'll change her number. She said, Nell's voice split open. She said I'd have to choose whether I want a man or a daughter because I can't have both. Nell, I reached for her hand. She's angry. People say things when, she's all I have left, Ryan. She pulled her hand back, not cruelly, just away. Do you understand? Walt is gone. My whole family is that one girl. If I lose her, I have nothing. I have an empty house and a mended heart that's still going to give out someday and no one to call. You'd have me. For how long? And there it was, the fear she'd named to me in the truck weeks ago come all the way to the surface. You're 35. You'll want children, a wife your own age, a whole life I can't give you. And when that day comes, and it will come, I'll have traded my daughter for a man who left and I'll have nothing and it'll be my own fault. Tears ran down her face. I can't. I'm sorry. I can't lose my little girl. Please, please don't make me choose you because I'm too scared to be brave and I hate myself for it, but I can't. I've been left before and I've done leaving and I know the difference between a person pushing you away because they don't want you and a person pushing you away because they're drowning. Nell was drowning. But knowing that didn't make it hurt less when she asked me, very quietly, to take her home. Not for a lap, just home. I drove her in silence. No long way, no lake. When I pulled up to that dark house, she got out fast before I could come around and at the door, she stopped and said without turning, "Thank you for the surgery. Thank you for all of it. Please don't call me for a while." And she went inside and the porch light I'd fixed clicked off and I sat there in the dark feeling like I'd lost her and Walt and the whole family all over again in one clean cut. The next morning she texted one line. "I'm sorry, Ryan. I can't lose my daughter. Please don't contact me." I typed back 3 different things and deleted all 3. Finally, I sent, "I won't push you, but I'm not gone. Whenever you're ready, I'm not gone." She didn't answer. For 2 days, I gave everyone space and told myself that was maturity. By the 3rd day, I understood it was just hiding wearing a nicer coat and I had promised myself and her that I was done hiding. So, I did the thing that made no sense. I didn't drive to Nell's. I booked a flight to Denver. I hadn't spoken to Chelsea face-to-face in over 2 years. She opened her apartment door and her whole body went rigid and she said, "You have got to be kidding me." And I said, 10 minutes, then I'll leave and I'll never come back, and that's a promise. She let me in. I still don't fully know why. Maybe because I'd flown 1,000 miles and she wanted to see what a man looks like when he does that. "Say what you came to say," she said, arms crossed, standing in the middle of a life I'd never seen. "You left her," I said. 3 years ago, you got in your car and you drove away and you left your mother alone in that house and you called it finding yourself, and that was allowed. Chelsea, I mean it. You get to build your own life. Nobody should be trapped by where they were born." Her jaw tightened. "Don't. But you don't get to walk out of a room and then guard the door." My voice stayed level. It cost me everything to keep it level. "You left the seat next to her empty. I didn't take your place. There was no place. There was an empty chair in a surgical waiting room and you weren't in it. I was. You want to be furious that she's happy, be furious. But be honest about what you're really furious about." "And what's that?" She snapped. "That she was your mother," I said. "But she was a woman before she was your mother, and you can't stand that she's still alive underneath it. You liked her better as a quiet, lonely house you could feel guilty about from far away. Somebody making her laugh again, that's the thing you can't forgive." Chelsea's mouth opened. Nothing came out. And then her face, the sharp, precise, armored face, just broke. She sat down hard on the arm of her couch and put her hand over her eyes. And when she spoke, her voice was nothing like the ice from the phone. "I know I left her. It came out wrecked. You think I don't know? I think about that empty house every single day. I call and I can't stay on the phone because the guilt it's unbearable, Ryan. It eats me alive. And then Denise calls and tells me my mother is happy, she's glowing, she says, and somebody else did that. Somebody else gave her that. Not me." She was crying now, really crying. "I couldn't fix it and you did, and I hated you for it because it means the fixing was possible the whole time, and I didn't come home." I sat down across from her. "You can still come home," I said. "That's the part you're getting wrong. It's not too late. She doesn't want to choose. You put her in a corner where she had to and she chose you. She'll always choose you. That's what a mother is. But she's dying inside doing it. You don't have to make her trade one love for another. You can just let her have both." Chelsea wiped her face with both hands, the exact gesture her mother makes. "This is so messed up," she said and laughed, broken. "You're my ex-husband. Yeah, and you love her." I didn't flinch. "Yes." She looked at me for a long time. "My dad would have," she stopped. "Your dad taught me how to build things that last," I said. "I don't think he'd hate that I'm still trying to." She was quiet a long while. Then she picked up her phone and her hands were shaking and she said, "I need to call my mom, alone." "Can you?" "I'm already gone," I said, and I stood up, and at the door I stopped. "Chelsea, for what it's worth, I'm sorry I went quiet in our marriage instead of fighting for it. You deserved a husband who fought. I learned that too late for us, but I learned it." She nodded, tears still running, and I let myself out. Nell called me at 9:18 that night. I answered before the first ring finished. For a moment all I heard was her breathing. Then she called me. Her voice was thick. She cried, "Ryan." My girl cried on the phone for an hour. She said she was sorry. She said, a shaky breath. She said she'd been so busy being guilty that she forgot to just love me. And she said, Nell's voice broke into something halfway between a sob and a laugh. She said, "If he makes you laugh like Denise says, then I want to meet the version of you that laughs. She's coming home next month to meet you properly as the man in my life. I closed my eyes and let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 3 days. Come over, Nell said. The porch lights on. I broke about 4 traffic laws getting there. She was on the porch when I pulled up under the golden light and she looked wrung out and cried out and more alive than I'd ever seen her. I came up the steps and she put both hands on my face and said, I almost let fear pick for me. Again. I almost lost the best thing left in my life because I was too frightened to reach for it. But you didn't. But I didn't. She smiled through the wreckage of her face. I love you, Ryan. I should have said it before it all fell apart. I'm saying it now in the light where anybody can see. I love you, too, I said. I've loved you since the first lap. Chelsea flew home the next month. It wasn't a movie. The first dinner was so awkward you could have cut it with a saw. She and I circling each other, Nell hovering with a serving spoon like a referee, everybody trying too hard. But at the end of the night, Chelsea hugged her mother at the door and held on a beat too long. And over Nell's shoulder, she looked at me and gave me the smallest nod. It wasn't forgiveness, exactly. It was the beginning of it. It got better slowly, the way real things do. Chelsea started calling and staying on the phone. She came home for Christmas and actually changed the sign at the church herself, laughing. She still gets a stiff look sometimes when she sees me hold her mother's hand. But she brings groceries when Nell's tired. And last spring, she called me, to ask how her father would have fixed a leaky faucet. And I talked her through it. And neither of us mentioned that it was the most normal thing in the world. Nell's heart is holding steady. She went back to school. That nursing acceptance letter from the shoebox, 30 years late. And she volunteers at the clinic 2 days a week now, sitting with scared people in waiting rooms so there's never an empty chair. We got a small place with a good porch and a garage for my tools. She steals the good side of the bed. I leave sawdust everywhere and get the look for it. We argue about groceries. In other words, we became ordinary. And after the way we started, ordinary feels like winning. And every so often, after a long day, she'll stand by the front door with her keys in her hand and a certain look on her face, and I'll already be reaching for mine. You didn't even ask, she'll say. You've got the face. I do not have a face. You've got the one more lap face. And she'll laugh, and we'll drive out into the dark with no place to be, past the church and the school and the old blue house at the end of her street. And every time we pass it now, she reaches over and takes my hand. And she doesn't go quiet anymore. That house used to be the place she was afraid to walk into alone. Now, it's just a house we drive past on the way to the rest of our lives. So, let me leave you with this, and I really want you to sit with it, wherever you are watching from tonight. Nell almost let her fear choose for her. She almost gave up the one thing that made her happy, just to keep the people around her comfortable. Most of us have a version of that choice, a dream we swallowed, a love we hid, a life we made smaller so nobody would look at us funny. So, here's my question for you. What is the one more lap you've been too afraid to ask for? And who told you that you weren't allowed to want it? Tell me in the comments.